Hello everybody and welcome to Army Painting Series 10, Episode 3. This is the episode where things get messy, or do they? Because we have a little different approach when we're using the contrast paints here. There's a little less of the makeup sponge, removing the paint, and in some ways it's a little more direct. We're applying that initial contrast paint more or less in the area that we want it, whereas you see with the liner paints, whether they mix together or not really doesn't matter. And also, as I said, with the makeup sponges, just as I've found, not real effective with the contrast paints. And just like our test figure, let's see which one of these was our, I think, here's our color test figures right here. And as before, we want to have some glowing stuff coming from the base, but not every single one of these has it. Because remember, we made a few different types of bases. Here we could have glowing eyes in the skulls, but actually what I think I want to maybe do is just have the blood thing going on in between the skulls. I've never actually done that, so I think that would be something interesting and fun to do. Here's also another one. Since we do have two of these, let's try it. You only live once. Only live once. Now, the rest of these are a little bit more along this path right here. We want to have the glowing stuff. But we also have some skulls down here, too. And we got, the three different poses. So what we're going to do is we'll try and keep it as simple as possible. We certainly use the Fleshed Heroes red and the Blood Angels red, which is not Blood Angels green, although I'm probably going to say that once or twice. The Snakebite leather was handy. The Wildwood mixed with the Leviathan blue. And I think the Iandan yellow is going to also play a role in here too. Then we also have the Space Wolves gray, but you also saw the regular paints that we mixed in, like the Screaming Skull. Is this the Flash gets yellow? Flash gets yellow. I think we have the Kislev flesh out here too. So we'll mix again some of these with those contrast paints. Obviously, we're still going to use our number 8 round craft brushes. We have some water on hand. Now I may use a little bit of the contrast medium. Maybe we'll stay away from that. Not quite sure just yet. Like I said, makeup sponges, probably not going to see too much in the way of these guys here, except maybe on the bases. So what we're going to do is we'll get our paint out on the palette, and once again it's going to be the wet palette. What we'll do is we'll start off with the initial glazes. I think we'll hit the bases first, and then we'll maybe work our way around to the figure. So we'll get right back on that. I say we get things kicked off with our bases, and that means we're going to reach into some Wildwood here. And what I'm going to do is alternate a little bit between the Wildwood. The blue, this is a bit of the Vulpes pink right here. We got some of the Snakebite leather. And we're just going to let that essentially mix together right here, right on the surface. A lot of it's going to, especially on this upper surface here, is going to be covered up in some ways anyway. So no sense in worrying too much about that. Again, I could use, oh gosh, what was that Orchide one? There's a Rhinox something, whatever. We could use that too. See, we'll just throw that down. Take some of the Wildwood, and it's almost like we just made a red liner paint there, which is most likely the liner paint that I would throw down in that area if we had that available. Now, like I said, I could still try and do the sponge removal thing, but we'll have the contrast paints do their thing. Just let them do that stuff and see where it takes us. Now, you notice this wet palette's the same from basically the last episode there. That was another test. I wanted to see how long things would stay workable. And it was pretty impressive, I gotta say. And again, these are the green stuff rollers that we used. Yeah, it's amazing how long these contrast paints in a wet palette will stick around. Now the Green Stuff World Intensity inks, they seem to dry a little bit faster in the palettes, that's interesting to discover because we've given those some tests, mostly on different commission things and obviously non-army painting stuff, but we're gonna try and do an army painting thing with those too. We try everything, we see what it does, and that it's much better making a decision from there than just, well, I mean, you can make assumptions, yeah, and to me, I'd rather know firsthand. There's just something about that firsthand knowledge of what you tried it yourself under your own conditions, your own workspace, with your own tools. There's value in that. So again, that's the Wildwood, but that touch of the Leviathan blue that got in there. See, now it's more just the Wildwood. That is effectively my brown liner. The snakebite leather, which I just grabbed, well, as you might have guessed, that's my sepia liner. As far as the red liner, that has to be made, and I think it's actually the pink and Wildwood is more a direct comparison. I suppose you could do the Flesh Tears red and maybe the Wildwood, but the pink just has that little bit of well, obviously some magenta slash purple in it, which, yeah, see, that was the Leviathan blue went in there. And see, even now, just with the contrast paints, we already have a difference between this level and this level. So as I said, it really, you don't have to overthink things too much. I see it happen so often where people they agonize over every last color that they're going to throw on here. It's no wonder, aside from, okay, things maybe not getting done when you want them to be, that you're less likely to paint, because I think we even discussed it in maybe the first or second episode. If something is going to be frustrating, why in the world would you voluntarily do that as your entertainment? You're more likely to say, the heck with this. I'm just going to Netflix tonight, and the next night, and the next night. And that leads to the guilt of not painting. And there's nothing like a little guilt to make you want to do something even less. So there's a little bit of moralizing right there. You get it all in the Army Painting series. So you notice I stuck more with the snakebite leather on the skulls and doing this little combination of the magenta and the Wildwood. Yeah, if they were to make a magenta liner, that could be, woof. Well, there's the clear magenta already, so I mean, in some ways it exists. So that's the snakebite leather mixed in. And like I said, I don't mind it sinking down into the recesses there because we got some plans for that. Now we got one last base here. And it's going to be a combination mostly of our snakebite leather and the Wildwood. I could go throw some interesting little things in there. Maybe a bit of the Space Wolves gray, just a touch of it, but we won't do that for right now. Yeah, this is interesting for me. I'm used to mixing stuff out on the palette. I'm really not used to doing this, reaching in little isolated containers. Not quite used to doing that. Now, on these, well, yeah, I suppose I could try and wipe some paint away like we would normally do, but when you do that, and it's weird because the contrast paint can look like it's still wet, but underneath it is set just enough that you do get a weird, you're sort of tearing the paint away. It's almost like you're using chipping fluid or something. And that was a little odd. I didn't expect that. That was definitely not what I thought was going to happen. And alright, we just got rid of all that just to here. Now, as those dry, we got a couple that where we have the base somewhat painted. What we'll do is we'll throw in some secondary glazes there. And this was interesting too because everybody's talking about the capillary action of this stuff. Well, it's certainly not perfect because there's a whole lot of skulls here where there's no paint down in the eyes. So I know that's supposed to be, oh, great capillary action. It's unbelievable. It's okay. It's good. But definitely not 100%. Found that out the hard way. That's another reason why I wanted to do these skull bases was to say, all right, I know what it would be like using the clear and liner paints doing that. All right, so we've got our secondary glaze on there. Let's start to work with our here. Let's grab a little different brush now. This is the Flesh Tears red. I'm going to start up here at the shoulder. Oh, let's even throw a little bit of the wildwood in there. Just a touch. That's it. Actually, maybe even a little more. Maybe a little more. But this is something you don't see me do a lot, where I just stop there at a line. That is unusual for me. Most definitely not something you've seen me do a lot. But now I am going to change. See, I just grabbed a little bit of that, oh gosh, the Vulpus Pink, I believe it's called. See, we'll stop there. Now we're going to go back. We're going to grab... See, I didn't even mix them together. That is just the wildwood and the Flesh Tear red just sort of on the brush. And now they're going to mix on the surface. Or at least that's the plan. Now let's hit the face here. It really, oh my god, it feels really strange doing this, I gotta say. But as I've said before, that's the reason why I'm doing this, to sort of, and in some ways, see how it is to be on the other end of the teaching. What is it like to be you guys? To see something and go, oh wow, yeah, that's really new and different. That was just the wildwood there. Now we're going to go back and grab our... That is the Flesh Tear red. And there's already a whole bunch of just stuff in the brush. And by stuff, it's virtually palette sludge. Maybe not. Maybe not. But we are using some of our colors from episode 3. Or episode 2. This is 3. What am I doing here? Yeah, it's really weird to be working this way, which hopefully is fun for you guys. Now we got to start that little bit of a transition. So we start in, that's going to mix some of the wildwood in there. So we start up here, we got that Flesh Tear red with the wildwood. I'm going to get some over here too. Now I Will we use the contrast paints to do the blood effects? I don't think so. But we are going to grab, that's the Blood Angels red. Time to warm this up a bit. Time to warm it up a little bit. And this is what we'll have to now repeat across several figures. Yeah, let's go back to that here. But I'm actually going to use a little snakebite leather, just a touch of it there. Alright. And now I'm going to grab some of the, this is the Leviathan blue, as that, and just let it sort of leach its way down into the hoof there. So this is just a touch of the Leviathan blue. See that? We'll let those mix together, do what they're going to do. And once again, that is the Wildwood / Flesh Tear red combination. We're going to start to essentially pull that color from the face and the skin out across this big old mane that he's got. So here we'll go with a little snakebite leather just to get a change in there. And now I started to add a little bit of the Leviathan blue to the mix. It makes it darker. It shifts it that much more towards a blue / purple and away from just a strict warm red. And as you know, we went back and forth on this a few times with our color test figure. Alright, let's get that completed there. You notice that I don't necessarily wash off the brush a whole bunch when we're doing this. As in, virtually not at all. Alright, that's the Blood Angels red. You're going to drop this on its side. Gonna getting a little touch of my snakebite leather here. And then we'll do that our Leviathan blue deal here, and we'll let some of that mix. Now I don't know how much of that you can see. Hopefully some of it's you can see easily enough. And remember, this is not by no means the final episode, the final segment of the final episode. We're still just starting to get in now to our, yeah, look at it. You can see some of those variations in there, but we don't have to worry about if there's a little pooling of something in one area. What does it matter? Because we're going back over the top of it anyway. Now, I think you can see how the Wildwood just affects, in a real interesting way, that Flesh Tear red. And you notice I go a little bit over the hair. Just a little bit over the hair. Not worried about the horns, whatever, the spikes that are coming out of his arms. We'll deal with that at another point. So this is just the straight up Flesh Tear's red. Allow it to maybe mix with some of the other stuff that's out here. These older sculpts, it's interesting because there's a lot of really deep set areas. Obviously, they're metal sculpts. They're not just old, but they're also metal, and that can sometimes change change what was possible with casting at the time. And I still haven't had a chance to find out for certain just how old these guys are. My assumption has to be from, say, 2000 somewhere between 2001 and 2004, which doesn't sound like a lot, and then you realize, then you go, oof, that's a long time, and in miniatures terms, it might as well be 100 years ago. Because think of how much the industry's just changed in the last 5 years. Now, basically tack on another 10 to that. That's some tremendous change. And it was changing even back in the day, too. So this is going to be wildwood, even a little bit of the Vulpes pink. So each one gets a see what that does? That's a little different, and that is a good thing. This has actually a little more brown. Now maybe it have a little more magenta brown, because I think too, and maybe this was just discussions that were on another podcast or that I had with somebody else. You, with your army, don't necessarily want every single one to be exactly the same, like they're just clones of each other. There should be some kind of difference between each one. We're just going to work this down. Now again, they got to get a little bit of the Leviathan blue in here too. This is, I just went back real quick to the Flesh Tears red, just to finish off that part. And what we'll do is we can let that set and go back in there with another glaze. I would say if you're using the contrast medium, you could get away with a little thinning of things. As I've mentioned a few times now, I think you can thin it with water, but that tends to be more effective at the stage where you've got paint mixed in with it. And by paint, I mean regular paint. Whether it's GW, whether it's Vallejo, whether it's Reaper Secret Weapon or Monument Pro Acrylic Creature Caster Slow Fuse, whichever one it is. Yeah, I'll just get a little bit into our Blood Angels red. You can go right back in there and do that sort of cleanup. Well, all we're doing is just setting the stage. We're setting it a little bit differently than we would otherwise, or than you've seen me do otherwise. Alright, there it is. Back to my... And it's weird because I'm looking at that Blood Angels red as I see it in the container. Don't know how much it shows up on camera, but it actually looks very opaque. That's fascinating that even one of the contrast paints in that container looks opaque. Because you've seen me use things that seem kind of opaque and then they turn out they're not quite so opaque. So again, Leviathan blue. We're going to let it just sort of spot mix here. Trying to use gravity because the paint's already heading down this way, right? So if I pop my Leviathan blue over here, it's more prone to mix down than it is back up again. All right. Let's there. I'm gonna go back to my Leviathan blue. Just sneak some. Yeah, that does it. And the question still continues to come up. Do you think the contrast paints save significant time? I don't really think so. Now, if you're looking, even if you're just looking to do something fast, because people say, yeah, I knocked this thing out in 3 hours or 2.5 hours with the contrast paints, and that sounds all fantastic, but knowing that I'm taking the clear and liner paints and others and my washes and glazes, and I'm doing the same thing in half the time. So what do the contrast paints really save you? Well, the one thing they will never save you, and this I now know, it's been long enough, and talking to people that are making other paint lines and stuff, it's not going to save you any money because I've used it long enough to know that it doesn't really last forever. It runs out real quick. You'd be shocked at how quick it runs out. And if you're going to apply it in that sort of GW way, well, guess what? It's going to run out that much faster. Now I'm going to work a touch more out this way. I need to get connected here to that bit. Yeah, I just reached for some of that Blood Angels red, and man, did it sure seemed very almost opaque like. And let the mixing begin once again. Once more. Just letting that blue, here's some wildwood. Constantly changing that color around. And that obviously would be a red liner, blue liner, brown liner, essentially. There. Now back to the fleshed here red. We'll get the hand over here. Now I'll either mix my own brown there for things like the axe handle or I might gore grunt to fur. That's what it's called. Just popped into my head. Not even sure what reminded me of it. Back into our fleshed here red. Maybe I'm going to actually start getting into the Blood Angels red already. Why not? And good grief, at some point here I'm going to end up calling that Blood Angels green. If you're wondering, well, why the whole Dark Angels thing going on? Well, because Kathy was painting up some of her Dark Angels again for the first time in forever, so I saw them, so it just puts that in my mind. And I suppose we can have, here's a little discussion. So she tried them all week long. She tried them for several hours on her live sessions, and she was not a fan. She said, I can already do things with other stuff. Why would I just not use that anymore and try this other thing that I don't believe really works as well anyways? So people wonder, well, it looks like you had, some kind of success with these. Why aren't you using them more? Why did you stop using them? Said, well, there was other stuff that I felt like it was more effective. That's the snakebite leather that I just let get in there. Now back to the little touch of the blue. Let's go more with the Leviathan blue here in these sections of fur. And let's see a little couple of gaps there. Let's get to our next one here. Okay, have we done this pose yet? Nope, we haven't done this pose yet. We'll dive right in here. Diving right in. Every so often, just, grabbing a touch of the wildwood. I know that the inside of the mouth will want that a little bit darker. We're going to even want some of the chest over here darker. I just don't care if it gets on that handle. It's not a big deal. Well, hey, we got sponges. Now we'll just wipe a little bit of that off. It's what sponges are for. Might as well use them. Now, I've also seen it where people use these in a very glaze-like fashion. They don't add the opaques to them. Their initial layers of this are lighter, and it's effectively kind of like doing a watercolor, which is nifty. But when you look at it, you can see, I don't want to say necessarily brushstrokes, but you can see that there was, you can kind of see the layers because it is transparent, but it also is pretty high intensity. Sometimes it will show you, okay, they must have done 3 or 4 glazes in this one spot. We are effectively glazing. 2, we're just doing that in a drier way by doing the opaque, that semi-opaque kind of glazing. So here again, that's the Leviathan blue that's mixed with our Vulpes pink. I'm gonna go once again back to my Flesh Tear red. And this is mostly wildwood right here, but also with what's in the brush. A little more. Back to my Leviathan blue. And so just trying to push that down into all of those really deep crevices, because some of the crevices on this hair rival the ones that you saw on that base with all the skulls on it. Okay, well, let's get down to this area right here. Back to my Flesh Tear red. Now, it is a nice color. Back when I was doing a lot of different Space Marine stuff that required red, or heck, even my Lizard Men, where I was doing skinks of many colors. Each unit had its own different color theme and everything. It's not like that would have been horrible to have for the Lizard Men. Who knows, maybe if that was around during my formative painting years, I certainly would be approaching things a lot differently now. I don't know, maybe even a little bit less from a 2D paint standpoint. Okay, I'm going to go, this is the, once again, that wildwood. And you can see how we let it sort of mix together here. Letting that Blood Angel's red work its way down, just letting gravity do its thing. That was, we reach for the blue. Let that hoof get some nice load of paint on it. Is that, yeah. What's weird is actually I notice more areas of a miniature that's not, doesn't have paint on it than with the other methods, especially the clear and liner paints. I tend to get everything and tend not to miss any crevices of any kind or any spots. But with this stuff, it happens. It happens an awful lot, and it's weird. Usually I just, either as I'm painting something else or I'm off camera looking at how things are drying, and I'll see that and I'll go back and get some color in that area. So just as before with the Flesh Tear red, see, I gotta wipe some of it away with my hand. That's because it was a really small area and it clearly was not going to have any time to dry at all. Oh yeah, let's get the... Here, see, I just threw in some dark there, and now this is the somewhat lighter, more saturated fleshed here red. I suppose that harkens back a little bit to what we do with the liner and clear paints. Yeah, the stopping point on this one could be really interesting compared to where we normally stop. Because actually the next thing that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hit the little odds and ends here, but then we'll be painting the bases because we have to establish, okay, not only which ones of these get some kind of glowing effect. See that right there? See, there's that, you end up with that watermark there, and that's after just a few seconds. So hopefully that just it illustrates what I've been talking about. Makes it a little bit easier to see that firsthand. Here again, back to the blue and fleshed here red mix. Because there's two of these that essentially won't have any glow on them whatsoever. If I had been able to, well, with the basing episode, I was trying to get a certain number of each one. I wish I could have maybe had one more just done on the skull bases. Just for that little bit of, three guys maybe that didn't have any kind of object source lighting on them, and that way could have been maybe one of each pose. Alright, now let's, again, this is back to our fleshed here red. I'll let that work its way in. Okay, top part of this die over here. Now I'm going to go just directly into the Blood Angels red. And as always, just keeping in mind gravity, gravity, gravity. It can be, well, it can be an enemy, it can be a friend, sometimes both at the same time. Ooh, there we go. That's a long painting parable, but it's a painting parable nevertheless. Yeah, gravity can be your friend, it can be your enemy, no doubt about that. There we go. Either way, you can't control it. Sometimes it's just both at the same time. Now this is like we've done all the other ones. As we get down towards the hoof here, that's blue. And you think, well, why are you doing that when you've got the yellow object source lighting, or orange as the case may be, going over the top of it? Because this is blue here and because it's darker, you get that much more contrast. Because it's, again, not only darker, but it's much cooler, and that's an important thing. So let's, yeah. Here's good. We'll do this last one here. Now this one, I'm going to see what happens if I can get the face maybe a little bit darker. A little bit down the darker side. And now this is more the straight up fleshed here red. And as I said, I'm not going to fret about exactly precisely getting all of the those little protruding horns painted. It doesn't mean you're not allowed to or something like that. If you feel like you need to do those right at this time, you go ahead and do you. That's fine. Yeah, each one of these is a little bit different as far as where the ears sort of connect to the hair, and the horns definitely, I think because the way they tried to sculpt and cast these things years ago, definitely have, there's a few weird things going on. Now we just got to do the hands and then the bottom legs, and then we'll get to putting the initial glazes on the other stuff. Some of the armor, some of the other, well, some of the skulls that are hanging off. So I'm almost priming the surface with the fleshed here contrast paint. Now here we'll go with some of the wildwood, let that just mix in here. A little more of the wildwood. Okay, now we're gonna work our way back into the Blood Angels red. Some more. So that one of the first, I guess, colors that we'll handle when we get back. We'll maybe put some of the Space Wolves gray out on the palette. Or maybe we'll even use this shyish purple slash warp lightning green, I believe it is. I'm gonna get some wildwood there. And now we conclude this phase with a little bit of blue on the hair here, and on the hooves, and I believe, yep, that gets all of the, that should get all the hair and all the skin colors. Okay, so what we'll do now, like I said, we'll do some of the chainmail, some of the bracers, and the weapons. And like I said, we'll throw out the Space Wolves gray, and we'll see what happens next. I threw some of this out onto the palette. And actually, this is a testament to just how wet the contrast paint mixed with the other stuff stayed, as I was able to wipe this stuff away just with one of my makeup sponges. So hey, we were able to wipe something off with a sponge after all. And the idea is we're going to try something here, because now we're working on more than one. I'll grab just a touch of the Leviathan blue. That's it. Remember, this is one of those lighter, I almost said intensity. It's one of those lighter contrast paints. It doesn't quite cover the same way, and we're going to try and use that actually to our advantage here. And the idea is, can you see that? Yeah. What we're going to do is let this be a little bit lighter in some places, and then we'll do those secondary glazes. Which means I have to allow this to be a little bit lighter here than, say, I would, it's certainly that it's going to be, but what I would ordinarily just let that do. Now I have to take a quick peek here at my, yeah, so that also needs it. And the idea is, let's see, also let's look at the I'm just going to take a quick look here at their... Yeah, we're even going to throw a little bit of the Space Wolves gray there, even though that's going to get some of the cooler colors, or some, we'll do like a snake bite leather, a little bit of a glaze over the top of that. But every so often I am going to let a little Leviathan blue sneak in there. There we go. What's interesting is that usually at this stage everything is lighter all at the same time, as opposed to some things are lighter. And it's interesting to see just how the camera tries to translate some of that. It definitely has a tough time. Okay, we'll march on to the next one here. Just gotta get that paint jar out of the way. Once again, I just a touch of the Leviathan blue in there, just a little bit. And the idea is that once this dries, I can go back in and hit it again. Maybe with a dose of Wildwood over the top. Maybe with, heck, even the dose of the Snakebite Leather over the top of it. Doesn't have to only be just more bluish grays. Because if you remember from the color test, and you can see it there in the reference pictures, that there was plenty of reflected light going on with these, not just as in the object source lighting, reflected light, but reflecting the red of the skin and everything else. Here we go. So the idea is to keep this somewhat on the more neutral side. We're gonna go back in with our lighter paints too. It's just the approach here, obviously a little bit different than, say, what is that? Oh, that's okay. That's one of the horns. Here into the next one. This is why I didn't mind that some of the reds leached into from the skin tone into, say, where the armor is, because it was bound to happen anyways. And we want to have a little bit of that reflected at the same time. So, hey, worked out fine. I'm trying to think. I don't really remember ever really painting this way. It's real interesting. This is something new right here. Now, painting single figures, not so different, but unit-wise, this is really different. But we're just trying to figure out how to make these paints work for us. Alright, that's a couple there. What I'll do is I'll take a little break from the metals here. Oh, looks like I forgot a hand. And I'll do other things. Well, speaking of the horns, and a hand, I guess. Somebody lend me a hand. I think you can see there's actually a little bit more Leviathan in there now than the Space Wolves Gray. So here, let's go back and grab some of that now. And is there anything? What about down here? Just the chain. Yeah, so actually there, some of the red that sort of leached into that, we're already kind of setting up some of our reflections there. That's a good thing. Now that's a time saver. That was one of those happy, not so accidental accidents. Now I will grab a touch of that Leviathan once more. It should be interesting to see once the Space Wolves Gray is dried to see what that really leaves behind. Because now the ones that are even lighter, some of those ones that are practically white, those are weird. And I would just say, you know what? Save yourself the trouble and just mix maybe some of the contrast stuff with regular paint and do that. Or just make your own with medium. Actually, I forgot. I meant to look earlier today to see if you can actually get things like, well, the most popular stuff, which we know is Wildwood, we know is the medium, but I don't know. I was wondering if oh gosh, what is it? The Black Templars Black. I don't remember if that kind of sold out in those early days or not. I can't even tell. We've been speculating just how much has the furor over this died down just from natural attrition? Or is it because maybe people now have actually tried it and formed their own opinions about it? But I see very few in the beginning. In the beginning, there was no contrast paint, but then there was, and all hell broke loose. But I don't see here's the latest take on the contrast paints anymore. Who would have thought that I would be doing more of those? That I'd be the guy doing most of the contrast paint videos. Because by the time this series is over, between the live sessions and this series, there could be dozens of these. Yikes. That is, well, let's just say that I still want to do my oil painting. The next series are going to have to be, well, I'd like it to be oil painting, but probably not, just given the fact that convention season is upon us again. So I'll still try to sneak them in. If I can, I will. Because I love me some oils. Alright. One last one with the Space Wolves Gray. And speaking of space, I found a whole heaping bunch of Necron stuff. And I'm tempted to do a couple of different things because I've got some infantry. And I've got a few of the Necron destroyers. Now they're old plastic things that basically were liberated via eBay and various, oh gosh, what bizarre bazaars that GW used to do in their stores. So some serious cleanup on those has to be done. But I've got a really nifty texture roller that I can play with, a Necron texture roller from Green Stuff World. That's gonna be fun. But the Green Stuff World metallic paints, and there's a lot of them. I mean, what better to try and mess around with object source lighting and true metallics? So don't be surprised if in July/August you have multiple series running at once. That's the only way I can actually have the oil painting stuff going at the same time, so that takes care of our bluish grays. Now let's move on to some other aspects here. Let's grab some of the snakebite leather here. Poof. And if that's just too plain, I'm going to mix it in with my Space Was Gray. That was just looking a little bit too orangey, too bright. So we knocked it down with the Space Was Gray. And now we'll just work our way around these guys here. Oh, let's see. Do I want to... No, I'm going to make that an even deeper... Go with some kind of wildwood slash green mix or something on that. Okay, back to my horns here. And now if there's a difference in the way this is being approached, say from the color test figure, well, that's the difference between having to paint one and having to paint a whole bunch. Okay, back to this. Now this is, yeah, even as I paint these things, the capillary action of this, and I only mention it because I just was talking about oils a bunch there. You cannot compare the capillary action of oils to this. I mean, it's a fraction of what the capillary action of oil paints can do. Because this is still an acrylic type stuff here. There is nothing does oils like oils. Nothing does oils like oils. Okay, we have that. Everything's set up pretty well there, yeah. I'm also trying to keep track of which of these guys is which pose. Because I'm just not... When it's the Song of Ice and Fire stuff, obviously I'm infinitely more familiar with that. Okay, I'm just gonna grab a quick touch of the wildwood here and just throw that in there. Cause we'll go with that. Okay. No, not enough. Now there's not enough of the snakebite leather in there, so we brought a little more back in. Let's see, is this the same pose that I just... No, because these... While this has this the curly Q stuff going on, it's at an angle, whereas the other one is straight. Oh, one more horn. Forgot that. Oh, and then there's a skull. Actually, there's more than one horn there. I'll just pop you real quick. Alright. Now, once we get the last of this stuff blocked in, it's gonna maybe start to appear more like what we're used to, where there is no primer anywhere. Because think about all the other army painting things, whether it's oils, whether it's acrylics, any kind of primer would have been gone, oh my gosh, a half an hour ago, more than a half an hour ago. It would have been gone 45 minutes ago. There would have been basically no trace of the primer. So hopefully these type of things where I just sort of throw myself some curveballs. I know in a way it's a de facto curveball for you, but think of it this way, it's a safe challenge for you. Because the one who's got to dig themselves out of the hole is me, not you. It's like watching somebody else bungee jump. So that is again throwing the wildwood in here. Real quick like. And if I need to get more of the snakebite leather, I will. Hopefully we don't have to bother with that. Alright. I'm just letting that be covered with the snakebite leather because that clearly Should be some kind of bronze or brass. Brass is it, right? Yeah, I think it's brass. Been doing so many YouTube live sessions lately, kind of in preparation for these, that I'm almost used to being able to ask people questions. Is that, yeah, what is this? I don't remember what this is again. Okay, while I'm thinking about it, I'm just gonna grab some of my red here, get this hand in place. That works well enough. Let's see, do I have... I guess there is enough of the snakebite leather, but I also want to make sure that the Space Wolves Gray works its way in there too. And I really don't care if it bubbles over onto, say, the arm or whatever. That is what the mixing the lighter opaque colors in afterwards is for anyways. I'm going to go back to that wildwood here. I think you can see right there. While I've got it, I'm actually going to throw another little quick glaze on the main. And, well, cheers for that. Let's see, is there anything else? Just I see the skull down here. Gonna grab me some of the wildwood. There's just a little bit of a gap underneath there. Okay, this would be the last of the snakebite leather here, and ironically I think this is the pose, the first pose. And I can see there's a little bit of wildwood in the brush, which is fine. Now this is more like the rapid fire speed here that I'm used to. Then I have to think, okay, what do I want to do? I just want to go with the wildwood, maybe with a touch purple or something like that for the handles of the axes. I can consult my color test figures too. Alright, so as we let that dry a little bit, let's look at our initial ones. I'm actually, we'll just go straight up. I'll just do the wildwood thing on that. I'm not gonna bother with grabbing Gorgrunt to fur or something like that. I am gonna just throw a little touch of water in that because I don't care if it's not gonna settle 100% perfect one color or not. And then by that time I think all of the metal bits should be dry enough so I can maybe do some secondary controlled glazes. Okay, I'm just making sure there's no more white in places here. Like here. Alright, see I've got I need to hit that with some paint there. Now I'm thinking that I'll maybe tackle these bases in the waning segments of the video here, because we've got to establish where there's going to be glow and where there's not. So we'll be spending a little more time, I would say, on the bases that have the glowing runes. Get dropping the wildwood down into here. And then, you see, this is this kind of secondary glaze that I might do on the metals up there. Okay. I'll proceed with just these last things. There's 4 more of these real quick here. Yep, and I can see another one here. I'm just gonna grab a touch of the, and you can see already that looks kind of interesting right there. See that little bit of, that was the little bit of wildwood getting into the Space Wolves gray. Now I think the deal with all the demons, even back in the day, was that these could be used for fantasy or for 40k. Especially, well, I'm trying to remember when the Demon Army officially came out. That might have been, I don't know, 2008, 2009. It's weird that doesn't sound like long ago until I realized, well, that's 10, 11 years ago. Yikes. I remember that was brand spanking new. That was the big deal. Okay. And one last here. Again, with the wildwood. And now you've got figures completely covered 100%. No more primer left anywhere. All gone. So that's actually a skull in a sack there. I only just now realized that. So I'm gonna grab one of these initial ones here. Let's see what we can't do. A little bit of Space Wolves gray, but now some of the Leviathan blue in the mix. And then things get a little more controlled. Slightly controlled chaos. We're almost using the Space Wolves gray as a bit of a medium there. Now, looks like you can see that. And now you can see what's happening. Then we're gonna remove some of it. And we're gonna remove even more. And this is that dry glaze. So see, we got the light or dark to light thing going on here. Let's see how many other places we can replicate such things. Got take away the excess. Now, for these sort of things, we need a little bit more of a linear. Remember, with these type of surfaces, we're always looking for that linear shadow, as opposed to like what we did here, where it's more just sort of spread out. A little more of a gentle arc. And let's do, we'll just throw some of the dark into here. Those coin symbols, I'm going to try and, I believe, get some of the, well, there's going to be a lot of the fire effects on these anyway. That's why I'm not going too crazy with the metals. See, here again, that linear effect. This should be lighter. That's certainly going to be lighter, probably getting hit by a little bit of the rune glow there. Okay, we'll got to do the same thing here. Once again, thinking those linear highlights, but here I've got that. I still got my yellowish snakebite leather stuff, so I'm going to throw that in there just while it's there. Now, I'm going to go Leviathan blue with some wildwood. We just need to get some true darks in here. Now remember, there is not going to be the reflected light. There's no lava stuff going on in the under section there underneath that. So that changes the approach here. Once again, need a sets of linear darks. So we'll throw a smaller line there. And see there, I had to remove a little bit of it. That's alright. And now, just need to get a little bit of a glaze there. So I can remove that and do a little bit of that. Almost like what we would do in the initial stage, because we've got the primer covered. That's the other thing I've noticed is you can start to do that thing where you add more water to it to thin it down, and you can rub stuff away. I think because you've got the lighter primer hidden, now you're just not going to notice it the same way. Okay. Let's see. This one also not going to have the lava glow on it. Once again, looking for that linear highlight. This will have maybe a little bit less of the lava glow on it too, because or the reflected light, you really just have runes there, and those should not be as brilliantly lit, say, as maybe those ones where you've got much more of the design showing. Oh, if you're wondering where you remember the skulls, they also come from Green Stuff World. And I'm going to work my way around this chain here. Again, searching for those semi-linear darks to add. See how we just sort of scumble this in? Like you do. I see there's a little bit of a gap right there. Now, hopefully this does look like a somewhat controlled use of the contrast stuff. I know it can really seem to be just sort of out there and just chaos. How appropriate. I didn't realize that those were metal till I started to paint those, so glad I saw that. Once again, another situation where I need to add some snakebite leather to an area. Here's just throwing some of the wildwood down in here to get into some of these darker areas. And now let's grab some, what the heck, we'll grab a little bit of the shyish purple. That's some of the Leviathan blue, and now I'm going to, just like I was doing with that Space Wolves gray, Leviathan blue, let's find some darks in here. And that's that sort of secondary glaze. Oops, no, yep, almost forgot that. Almost left that behind. It's not crucial for me to do that right at this moment, but I've got the darker stuff and it's sort of on my mind, so Why not? Okay. So like I said, the next thing we are going to tackle are the bases, and that'll get us through episode 1 pretty well. We've done quite a bit. Actually, what'll be interesting now, just take a look at I have the different title screen images. There's typically 4 or 5, something like that, and they show the stuff at different stages. And it's where I kind of talk about what's going to happen. Maybe you entertain yourself a little bit. I know I am by looking at those first 4 images or whatever and see what these look like compared to maybe the stuff that's done in a typical episode 3. Now, of course, it can depend a little bit when you compare them to the Rohan guys. Well, that was another compressed color scheme. But if you compare it to, say, maybe the Warrior Sons, which was the series before that, could look very, very different because that was a complicated color scheme for one thing. Here, let's get a little more of our mix down in here. So I can't wait to see that. I think it's going to be significantly different. Okay. We're just adding these last bits of dark in here. It's these last couple of guys. And then we can move on to those bases. Alright, see, I'm just getting this down into those crevices here. This one in particular has a lot of these deep, each pose is a little bit different. This one's really got some deep crevices behind the ears and such. And this guy, we've added a significant, on this one we had already added some of the darker tones there. So I can even add a little bit more to the axe. Alright. So what we're going to do is, where it's needed, we're going to start to do some of our little object source lighting type stuff on our bases. So ones like this guy here. Something like that. So we'll be right back with some base painting. So here's another cautionary tale. I had ordered, oh gosh, forget what website it was. What I thought was Vallejo fluorescent orange, and what I got was this mecha color, which is massively, it is watery. I think it's designed for those super thin tolerances of the Gundam type figures. So, I can see how watery that is. It's not the thick kind of stuff that we're used to. So what I did do, I still have the other stuff. I just want to see what happens with this. So I got the flash gets yellow. What we're going to do is see, can we mix those two together? And can the flash gets yellow? Because what I noticed is that the GW paint did not like mixing so much with the fluorescent paints. So I'm going to see if I got one of these brushes here. See if we can make this work. So I'm going to put a little bit more of this mecha stuff out here. Again, it's fluorescent orange, but it's not anything. Look how runny that is. But does it work better with the GW paint? We're going to find out right now. It could work. It could be horrible. About to find out. All right. Well, actually, it seems to work. Look at that. Believe it or not, I like this mix better than I did the actual fluorescent orange that I thought I was going to get. So I say, huh, interesting. Very interesting. It also sinks down into the, ironically enough, the crevices a little bit better that we need here. So that is not too bad. I don't, now I'm not so irritated. I was a little bit irked when I first saw it. And then I was genuinely unhappy when I opened the bottle and it just was orange liquid instead of more of the orange, the solid orange that you've seen in previous episodes. So this, well, look at this. This is going to work very differently than it did in the test figure. Yeah, hey, okay, yeah, look at that. That's just sinking down in there. It's almost acting more like a contrast paint, oddly enough. Look at this. Yeah, it's just kind of sinking down in there like a wash. Well, you learn something new every day. I sort of like that now. There's a whole bunch of situations where I can think this would be absolutely the last thing that I would want. But in this instance, I think, heck, I'm going to see if they actually have a mecha version in, say, the fluorescent green. Because think back to some of the other, well, I know I can think back to Series 1, where we had these sort of dark runes set down into the base, and it was really tough to get this color down in there. And it's interesting because the GW stuff, it really didn't like it mixing with the fluorescent paint at all. It was okay mixing the GW paints with the contrast paints. That worked out okay, but boy, did not really like mixing with the fluorescents. So we made a new discovery. Oh, let's see if we can make a painting parable out of that. You can't make a voyage of discovery if you don't get on the boat. I wish I could write that down right now. Yeah, that's kind of fun. I did not anticipate that at all. And obviously on this one here, there's that much more of a design, say, than on some of the other ones. There's one that's mostly just runes. But this has the actual little kind of skull design in it, which is cool. So the first order of business, and we're already talking about episode 4, first order of business is going to be, so we've worked on our bases here. We're going to, in a way, continue that. But we've got to get the reflected orange fluorescent onto the figure 2. Right here we're just sort of focusing in on the bases because I don't want this one to be a 3-hour video. Doesn't have to be. Interesting. Really interesting. Alright, where are we at? We're on screen. So yes, I can take that and sort of wipe that away a little bit easier, but it's not always necessary. And it covers too. Also a surprise. I would have thought at that being that thin, that as it got down into our runes there, it would really have a tough time. Well, now you can see it. Sorry, I had it turned so that I could see it, which is not always the best for you to be able to see it. Here, let's And it did make a decent little bright orange too, mixing them together. And remember, this is just a first application here. There will be some more tweaking of it back and forth. Some parts will be glazed actually a little darker. Other parts will almost get a bit of a highlight. Ah, now you can see it. So yeah, that was all experiments are not successful. I guess some voyages of discovery end in disaster. That's kind of how it goes. The boat runs aground or it sinks. And it happens. All right. Now these runes here, I think it's gonna be hard for you to see because he's standing on top of them. And in this case, let's try this. Okay, we've been doing the delicate stuff. Let's do the less delicate and see what happens. We're gonna go for speed here, and we'll see if it works. It may not work. The other way we did it on color test figure, well, maybe what's set down in here, because it was thicker, holds better when we start doing something like this. I think you know what's coming here. So I'm thinking, yeah, see, it does remove a little bit too much of it. All right, that's good to know. So that technique that we did with the wiping things away, it takes too much away because this is so thin. Because what I'd rather have is this be a little bit more intense and then go back over the top of this with those darker colors, remember? So, like I said, there was a test. Didn't like the results of that test. But by doing the test, we know. Okay. I am going to hit this as much as possible with our fluorescence here. Yes, it is transparent, but it can still affect. That's not too bad. Now the thing is, it ceases to be fluorescent on its own. It just turns pink. So that part is disappointing, that it's really more like fluorescent pink. But we added the flash kits to it, and then guess what? It becomes fluorescent orange. So in the interest of time, what I will do then, I'm going to fill these puppies in, because remember, we're trying to time this. And if it's going to take us an hour to paint 7 bases, well, that can start to add up. Even on a Sigmar army where you might maybe only have 10, 15 of these guys. There we go. So I'm kind of scumbling it to force it down in there and not have too much overflow. While this dries, then we're going to go to our 2 skull bases. I think there's 2 of those. And we'll tackle those. That's where we're actually, ironically enough, going to pretty much see the first mix of our contrast paints with the regular GW paints. And we're just, again, filling in our runes here, trying to shove that paint down in there. That's the mix of the flash gets yellow. Mixing the flash gets yellow and our, well, contrast fluorescent. Oh my gosh, that is just the most bizarre thing. I can only imagine what I got a magenta one too. can only mention what that's going to be like. So I think from now on I will just, if I'm looking for Vallejo fluorescents and I don't find them actually physically in a store, I will just, well, may just have to go to Vallejo itself to get them. So, okay, there is still one more rune base to do here that has the glow. Yes, I'm still glad that this is kind of a hybrid approach between they slop it all in there and try and take it away, and they try and drop it in there somewhat gently. It almost looks like a flaming newspaper now. Couple more runes here. I think the other one actually has a pattern on it as opposed to the big batch of runes. Okay, yep. This one here, that's it. It's a little bit of a mix of the two. A little bit of each. So obviously there's going to be a lot of reflecting onto this sword blades and stuff. It may take even more than just the first segment to get all of the glow in place everywhere it's supposed to go. But that's a real dominant feature of the entire unit, is that stuff, is this glowing stuff, the object source lighting. A little bit like the Army of the Dead was the same way. Alright, I think that I can move to the back here, and this is mostly just the pattern. Trying to work as much of the orange into this as I can. That's the, well, that's more like fluorescent pink, as I said. Thank goodness for, well, I would have probably taken, if it was Reaper stuff, either the clear yellow or the golden yellow. Mix that in. All right. Now let's start hitting some of the skulls here, and do we just grab Screaming Skull and we'll just mix it with some of our some of our other paints here. I'm just going to throw that out right there. Gonna go back to our other brushes. So I hope you didn't mind that we tried a little experiment there. I had to see what was going to happen. Look, we conveniently have our snakebite leather sort of mix that we did over here. And now the fun begins with our semi-translucent. We're starting out with a bit of a mid-tone here. This is why I didn't fret about wiping away some of the paint. This is that big old orc skull it looks like there. Alright, I gotta move some of these other guys that don't have this out of the way. So not a dry brush, which, yeah, you really can't do dry brushes with contrast paints anyway. So not a big deal. You can do a dry glaze with them, as we discovered. Alright, you can go out of the way. I will be glad that there won't be any more metal figures precariously balanced on my miniature holders once this unit is done. Because these guys they have sort of a weird center of gravity with those metal weapons that are hanging off of them. If it was plastic, it wouldn't be a big deal. Heck, even if it was resin. But as metal, definitely more tricky. Alright. Now I want to leave some of the staining of some of the skulls that's in here. And we don't want every single skull to be the same level of lightness either. First of all, boring to look at. Second of all, don't forget that blood effect thing we wanted to experiment with. Okay, let's actually going to grab a touch of that yellow there. And we'll work our way back in on some of these, but we don't want every single skull lightened in with the same color. So I'm going to do a few of these and then move on and then go to the other ones and find a slightly different color. So, I mean, maybe here where he's got skulls hanging off of him already. See, in theory I can go on to the... This is that whole use a color while you've got it going. So see where maybe we will do this at least just on the ones that have these skulls on the bases. Because what I might do in some of these other ones is almost use more of a purplish highlight color. Hard to describe. It's more you'll know it when you see it kind of thing. So this does it's just a little quick correction too on the other areas. This is why remember I said I didn't worry about some stuff maybe getting covered up or wiped out because we were going to be doing this stage with the semi-opaque stuff. And I know it looks really dry as I sort of scrunch that stuff off the palette, but it's actually not dry. If it was dry, there's no way I could be painting all these different elements at the same time. So now you see things start to really, they start to speed up, start to charge forward. And on to this one. So now those darker glazes on the spikes or horns, whatever those things are, starts to come out a little bit more. And I'll say I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to do too much of these skulls in the exact same color. Let's get some, pull some of that, make it a little more on the pink side here. Oh, there's one that has absolutely nothing on it. This is... it's going to be interesting to see what these look like in those opening photos. I kind of almost can't wait to see that. Usually just this episode 3, the title photos just, they don't look super interesting, to say the least. Obviously, because what's it focused on? It's focused on just setting things up for the next couple of episodes. So it's bound to not be quite so thrilling. But these should look really different than usual. Or I could be completely wrong. Alright, that gives us... might even just indicate teeth there real quick. Now let's get some of that screaming skull back out here. And you can see how much lighter we can still go. Now let's shift this back here away from the yellow. It's light, but now not as much with the yellow. Let's get a few of these skulls. And because we had some of the contrast paint in there, it's going to act to just keep it that much transparent. Yeah, this is supposed to be about painting the skulls on the bases, but hey, I see an area that I can also paint at the same time. And this is not even necessarily about painting everything on the base 100%. I may just kind of stop at a certain point with these. Because, well, now I've picked out basically, what is it, 4 of these that have this type of a base. I don't want the other ones to sort of lag too far behind. Okay. Oops. Look at that. There's another one that has absolutely nothing on it. Now it has a little something. We'll do our next guy here, which, oh look, happens to be the exact same pose. So we're going after, again, the skulls where we can, and also whatever these little spike slash horns are here. And then again to the skulls. And I'll probably do more glazes over the skulls. Maybe even do some... Oh, where is it? Somewhere... Ah, here it is. Because, oh look, we have this. That's another reason why I wanted... I haven't actually tried this stuff yet. It's weird after all the Song of Ice and Fire stuff. I was just trying to use this as a blood effect. So, see, oh, look at that. Yeah, see how that just kind of... It's almost like a contrast paint. I guess it's a glossy contrast paint. I wouldn't be surprised if the formulation is darn near the same. It's just a little glossy. Okay, let's see if we can't find a few brighter elements on our skulls here. And then remember, we got to go back in, and it's going to be a challenge because we don't have, say, the red liner slash brown liner to rely on to go over the top of this and knock that down, make it darker. So it's going to be a challenge, to say the least. But we welcome challenges. We definitely welcome those. That's what pushes you further. If there's never any challenge, believe me, everything just sort of stagnates. And you'll get bored. I'm just going to grab a little bit more of this. Alright. Where are we at? I just want to make sure you can see these because they're... with those weapons and stuff, they kind of hang out a little bit further. And they're leaning forward too. So it tends to block out more of the base. I believe that blood stuff there, that is going to just wait. That'll certainly be a last segment of the last episode sort of deal there. Alright. And some of these I will just, like I said, I'm going to go back over it again with the darker glaze. Maybe that's where I do take the snakebite leather and mix it with a little bit of the contrast medium maybe and knock it down. That's not a bad use for it. Alright, we will here. Yeah, see that starts to pull some of this out. Get me some separation between those skulls on his hip that he's apparently carrying around like hip flasks. And as I did on the other one, just do some of the skulls, not all of the skulls. Alright. And I'm still trying to think, okay, will we need a fifth episode? Or do we just do a really long episode 4? I think there's going to need to be a fifth because I want to do things like the blood effects. And I don't want to just plow through that. I want to see how it works. And I may have to mark off this edge here too. So that just rushing through that maybe not the best plan in the universe. I know it's army painting. We want to get things done right quick. But sometimes doing something twice, not so quick. And we'll just, like I said, not necessarily go extreme highlights everywhere. And, of course, what have we not used? There is certainly no white. There should be absolutely zero white until mid to late episode 4, if not mid to late episode 5. Gotta stay away from the white. But by having this mix of lighter and darker skulls, I think that's gonna let the blood effects show up a bit more. Maybe even in here too. It should be interesting, and if I don't like it, I can just drop some glazes over it and maybe it just kind of disappears. Again, it's if you don't jump on the Voyage of Discovery, you got to get on the boat if you're going to do the Voyage of Discovery. Okay. So let's just call that. We'll say that's enough of that. Let's try and get our darker color in here. Let's see, what do we want to do to make that? Do we have much wildwood? Yeah, we do. Remember, this has to be on the drier side, so that is going to be the wildwood / fleshed here red mix. But we have to, yeah, that it's working. I just, like I said, I really enjoy my red liner, but that's not doing too bad. Look at, see the difference that makes there? Yeah. It's nice that it has a little bit of transparency to it. And see, it's a wet brush, but that is all contrast paint, believe it or not. It doesn't necessarily all have to just sink down into crevices. It can actually just ride over the surface. And I was counting that in some places it might actually sort of shade / tint the orange that's in there. But I'll probably take what's the yellow one? That's the contrast Iandan yellow. We'll probably do a glaze of that over it too. Alright. This one, it's got a whole bunch of runes on it. And look at how, see how that brings them out? Oh, well, now you can see how it brings them out. And the base has a little tinting of red. Maybe, oh, just a touch of that Leviathan blue. Makes it even darker. Yeah, that's what we want. Okay. Let's see if we can get underneath the legs there. Good, good, good. Nice. Nice. Now, I gotta go back to my other ones over here. So we've done several experiments in this episode. I mean, geez, this whole series is an experiment. Oh my gosh. That's one crazy experiment. I'm going to grab me just a touch more of my wildwood here, wherever the heck that is. I don't need a lot. Just going to directly apply it into there. And I'm holding the brush on its side. It makes that big brush into an even bigger brush. I'm going to go in and just paint those skulls. Maybe we'll do it, yeah, because they're going to need to get some reflected light. So we'll do that. Remember, that's the first order of business, is actually painting in some of that reflected light. So those skulls will be part of it. Alright, this is the last one where we're going to do this particular effect. Works well enough. It's a little bit trickier on this one. And you notice that I keep changing my direction a little bit here. See, now I'm going to work in this direction. I have to find the direction that works best for just kind of catching the top of that, basically the top of the ridge. So that pretty well secures there. So let's try one final experiment as we close this out here. Because those are very yellowy. I want to get more orange. So here's another test. So here's our, see, that's just kind of a dirty orange there. Boy, that really is sort of on the dirtier side. But I'm going to see what happens with a touch of that mixed in too. So that's the Iandan yellow and some of the fluorescent orange. Or shall we say fluorescent pink. Yeah, it's darkening some of those down and making them a little more towards the orange, I suppose. I think what would have been more interesting is to maybe take the contrast paint and combine that with the other fluorescent orange, which we'll call the real fluorescent orange. So I think I might, no, I won't break, well, I don't think I'll break that out right away for when we start doing the reflected light on the miniatures themselves. Just the last couple of these. Yeah, I just want to say to all the folks that support the Army painting level, I appreciate it. It means a lot because, well, just think of the experiments that were just done here. I probably never would have messed around with the contrast paints at all, much less this much. And like I said, it's always discovering something new, something interesting. And actually, if you can, just maybe drop a a like on this thing here. YouTube likes that, makes them happy. And actually, well, if you haven't done the subscribe thing yet, if you do that, I guess you have to click the bell thing too these days, and that'll give you more notifications on those live sessions, because those are fun. There's more experimenting that happens there. So okay, that didn't work too horribly either. It sort of did what I wanted to, because now it has a little more orange and a little less just yellow. So that's really nifty. So like I said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start establishing the glow on these guys. So I'll catch you on episode 4 of Series 10. Thanks again, and see you later.